Alabama 48, Tennessee 17. The obvious key takeaway from this is the Jaylen Waddle injury. We've seen, Colin, we were talking about this before the show. We've seen a lot of terrible injuries happen. And we've always gotten some back and forth behind the scenes. Anytime an injury happens, even if they show it on TV, like, are we going to show it here? And most of the time, I say no. But the Waddle injury is weird. When I saw it happen live, I saw him limp off. Thing just didn't even look all that gruesome to me. You just see so much worse. And the point is, it doesn't matter what it looked like. It matters what it is, and it is broken ankle, fractured ankle. I'm not a doctor. I just know when they can't put weight on it, and then the head coach lets you know at halftime he's out for the year, it's probably not a good thing. So I want to address a couple of things here. Number one, that's one of the best players in college football. It's one of the best players on their team, obviously. It's my favorite player to watch in America. So not good from that standpoint. What are they going to be moving forward? How does this relate to the rest of their season? We're going to touch on these pretty quick because we got a lot to get to tonight. But I cannot believe that we still have this conversation. And I'm not talking about my cousin Rita. I'm not talking about Granny Pate. I'm talking about people who make a living in the industry of sports media, actual, according to them, football-minded people, asking questions that sound like this. Should he have even been in the game? Should he even be returning kicks? Should a player that important be returning punts? And this is ignorance now. It's pure ignorance, and I'll get fired up about it, so I'm not going to talk very long about it. Let me just break it down for you like this. The touchdowns that Jaylen Waddle, for example, scores when he catches the football and he runs into the end zone, they count those for 6, right? Those are really good. Those are really important. How much do the touchdowns that he scores when he's returning a kick count for? How much do those punt return touchdowns count for? Colin, do we have the rule book around? I'm pretty sure they're still giving out 6 for those too. I'm also pretty sure that I hear you guys. This is how you know you don't value special teams. Because a lot of you in this crowd, the ilk that I'm talking about right now, will look you dead in your eyes and say, all 3 phases, offense, defense, special teams, which I did the numbers, it's about 33% apiece. And yet I got these same fools looking at me saying, well, yeah, he should be on the field 3rd and 3 as a slot receiver, but you can't put him on the field returning kicks. He could get hurt. Now, this guy's been returning kicks ever since he's been in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. No one ever cared, of course, until he got hurt. So if anyone out there is suggesting to you that your best football players should not be on the football field when you're trying to score, and I'm talking about returners, I'm talking about on the gunner unit, I'm talking about coverage units, anything. Nick Saban's always put his best players on the field. That's why they largely dominate in special teams, which, as we just said, is a third of a football game. So if you got people out there suggesting otherwise, it's okay to have them in your life. It's okay to be friends with them. Don't value someone's football opinion who's telling you the best players on your team don't belong on the field on special teams. So again, let's move on from that. That's pure ignorance. I think a lot of people were taken by surprise yesterday at a kid named Slade Bolden. Slade Bolden is a guy who saw some spot duty last year for Alabama, a little bit more than spot duty. This is a guy they love now. He came off the bench yesterday. I think he had either near or a little over 100 total receiving yards, and he stepped in right in place of Jaylen Waddle. This is a guy who's going to get a lot of attention now. I want to make sure you understand he is a very good football player. This is not some dude who kind of ho-hummed his way to a performance yesterday because he was being overlooked, and he is very versatile. He's a guy who played quarterback in high school. He's a guy who gives Steve Sarkisian some opportunities to do a lot of different things. They wanted to get him in games a lot anyway. It's just that who are you going to put him on the field in place of, right? So now you've got him. Of course, John Mechie is going to play a more important role. Texting back and forth with some people at Alabama yesterday. You remember the name Javon Baker. It's a guy that is a true freshman out of the state of Georgia. They loved him in fall camp. Just he hasn't been good enough to surpass someone who's already on the field for them. I think they will emphasize getting him ready right now. See, the way Alabama practices, and the reason they look so good at receiver, the reason they never make mistakes at receiver, is because they don't work 15 guys at receiver in practice. I mean, it's the guys who are going to start, obviously get a vast majority of those reps, and they rep them over and over and over again. That's why you don't see a huge rotation of receivers for them. But now you will see a guy like Javon Baker, for example, obviously Bolden, and obviously John Mechie will figure in a lot more heavily. Now let's talk about Alabama-Tennessee, because that was the game that happened yesterday. I'm going to give you some wild stats here right quick. Back in 2007, when Nick Saban came to Alabama, they were 7-6. They lost to Louisiana Monroe that year. But even that year, they beat Tennessee, 41-17. A lot of you will remember that game. They had 5 guys suspended before kickoff. They went onside kick to start the game. So even in Saban's worst year, he dominated Tennessee. Over a decade later, nearly a decade and a half later, he is 14-0 against Tennessee. That matters a lot, especially to older Bama fans. That matters a whole lot. But that's not the craziest stat, okay? Everyone knows they've dominated Tennessee. I had someone send me this on Twitter last night, and this is public information. They just kind of encapsulated it in a very striking manner. You would consider, historically, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, those are the big three in the SEC East. Let me hit you with this. Since 2008, so Saban's second year in the SEC, since 2008, he is 25-1 against Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee combined. And that loss came in the 2008 SEC championship game against Urban Meyer's Florida Gator team, led by Tim Tebow. They had a fourth quarter comeback, and they beat Saban. It has been about a decade since he's lost to any team in the East, and that would have been, of course, the South Carolina Gamecocks in 2010, hashtag Steven Garcia. So, I mean, the Roman Empire, at the height of their power, could not go onto a playground and do the kind of damage that Nick Saban has done to the SEC East. That is incredible. Everybody gears up for Alabama. Everybody recruits to stop Alabama. That guy is 25-1 against the big three in the SEC East since his second year there. And you know, for that matter, as we move on, when he got there in 2007, I remember the over-under. I remember the total years for Saban projection out there. And it was, is he going to be there 5 years, 4 years, 6 years? This is 14th year. So, hey, congratulations to the over. Now, Jeremy Pruitt drew the ire of some Tennessee fans after this game. Something he said I thought was taken a little out of context, but some of you heard the whole quote. You just took umbrage with it. I should get money for using the word umbrage, to be honest with you. He said the gap is closing between Tennessee and Alabama. I had a little fun with that, as did most of you. Listen, technically he's right. Okay, the problem, as I pointed out last night after he said it, is it's also technically true that Birmingham is closer to Japan than Atlanta, Georgia is. That's true, still a long way, regardless of which point you're looking at, between those respective southeastern U.S. outposts and Japan. There's a long way still, even if they're closer, between Tennessee and Alabama. And here's the point, and this is what I'll go back to for the rest of the year with Tennessee. What is their maximum potential? On their current trajectory, what is their maximum potential? Because no one's closing any gap with Alabama. And when I say close, I mean be able to beat them. No one's beating them with average quarterback play. No program is closing the gap on the elites in this sport with average quarterback play. The University of Georgia is everything Tennessee's trying to be now on steroids. They have a better offensive line situation depth-wise. They have better running back situations. They have better tight end, wide receiver, defensive situations. But they are average at quarterback by the national standard. They're average at quarterback. Georgia couldn't compete with them for 4 quarters a couple of weeks ago. So what are you working towards is my point. They got to get so much better at quarterback. I'm not going to belabor that point or beat that dead horse, but I don't care about any gap closing conversation, because if someone's going to have that conversation, it's Georgia. We talked about it all week leading up to that game. That talent gap, Georgia has closed the gap. Doesn't matter, because there's one position, it's very important, it's quarterback, where they haven't closed the gap. Until you start closing it at quarterback, I don't really care about that. Alabama's offensive line is probably the best one Nick Saban's had. I know that 2012 unit was incredible. I don't think that 2012 unit, when it comes to pass pro, is in the same league as this one, nor did it need to be. They are incredible. They're absolutely, you would think like Emil Ekiyor would be the weak link, and they just destroy people. He just destroys people on the inside. They were picking up and totally displacing Tennessee defensive linemen yesterday, like you shouldn't be able to do on Earth. Maybe on the moon, not on planet Earth. Also, a good note here, and I don't know how much to take away from it, but a really good note for Alabama if you're looking for marginal defensive improvement. They held Tennessee to a 4 of 16 on 3rd down yesterday. So, good day for Alabama, bad day, though, for Jaylen Waddle. And now they move on. They're going to play Mississippi State Saturday. I will say this about Tennessee. They made a second-half charge last year. I think a lot of people are selling on this team. As a contender, obviously, it's appropriate to sell on them at this point. I think Tennessee's best football is still ahead of them this year, and I really think that there is a different gear that some of their offensive skill is going to allow them to catch in the back half of the season. They've got some games that they're not going to necessarily be favored in that I think we may be giving them a strong look in. So we're now a little bit higher on Tennessee, is what I'm trying to tell you, than maybe the general public is.